Rebecca Parker is a name that commands respect in the business world. In her mid-40s, she's built an empire, 2 thriving restaurants, a chain of high-end cafés, and a consultancy firm that's known for its sharp edge in the industry. Her life is a picture of perfection. Designer suits, expensive cars, and a luxurious penthouse in the city. To everyone around her, she is the epitome of success, a powerful woman who seems to have it all. But behind closed doors, Rebecca feels a profound emptiness. Her accomplishments, once a source of pride, now feel hollow. The endless meetings and social events have become a blur, and her evenings are spent in silence, staring out at the city lights with a glass of wine in hand. She's mastered the art of looking busy, but inside, there's a void she can't seem to fill. The loneliness has become her constant companion, a reminder of the life she never got to live. In her 20s, she was driven by ambition, always striving for the next milestone. Relationships were sacrificed for success, and now, with the world at her feet, she finds herself more isolated than ever. It's a quiet ache, buried under her confident smile and sharp demeanor. Rebecca's days are filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and calls with investors. It's a routine she knows well, one that leaves little room for anything else. That is, until one ordinary afternoon when everything changes. At a high-end grocery store, her usual place for picking up dinner after work, she's moving through the aisles when she notices him. He's standing by the fresh produce section, seemingly out of place among the polished clientele. He's young, early 20s at most, with tousled hair, a leather jacket, and a relaxed, almost rebellious air about him. He catches her eye with a confident grin, as if he's amused by something only he understands. For a moment, Rebecca feels a spark, an unexpected flutter she hasn't experienced in years. It's unsettling, almost disorienting. She looks away quickly, but not before catching a glimpse of his bold, carefree smile. He's everything she's not, young, unburdened, and full of raw, untamed energy. As she walks away, she finds herself glancing back just once, to see if he's still there. He is, and this time he gives her a wink. It's playful, almost teasing, and she feels a rush of adrenaline she can't quite explain. Rebecca returns to her car, her mind racing. It's a fleeting encounter, a moment that should mean nothing. But as she drives home, she can't shake the image of his grin, the way he looked at her like she was someone interesting, someone worth noticing. It's a feeling she's almost forgotten, a feeling she never expected to find again, especially not from a young man with a reckless smile. And just like that, the spark of something new and unknown ignites within her, leaving her to wonder if it's just a harmless distraction or the beginning of something she never saw coming. Rebecca tries to push the encounter out of her mind. It was a brief moment, a chance meeting that shouldn't matter in the grand scheme of her life. But as the days pass, she catches herself thinking about him more than she'd like to admit. It's absurd, she tells herself. He's just a random young guy she met at a grocery store. Yet, she can't help but remember his confident smile, the way he seemed to look straight into her, as if he could see past her polished exterior. The week continues in its usual fashion. Back-to-back meetings, a client dinner at her newest restaurant, and the never-ending buzz of her phone. It's exhausting, but it's the life she's chosen, and she's always prided herself on her ability to thrive in this environment. However, there's a part of her that feels strangely detached, like she's going through the motions without truly being present. It's Friday afternoon, and she decides to take a rare break. The sun is shining, and for once, she wants to feel like a normal person, not the business tycoon everyone expects her to be. She heads back to the same high-end grocery store, hoping to find something fresh for dinner, a quiet meal alone in her apartment, away from the demands of her work life. As she browses the aisles, she spots him again. He's leaning casually against a display of oranges, chatting with one of the cashiers like he owns the place. The same leather jacket, the same tousled hair. He looks up and sees her, his face breaking into that familiar, confident grin. Well, he says, stepping closer. Didn't expect to see you here twice in a week. Are you following me? Rebecca feels a flush of heat rise to her cheeks, a reaction she's not used to. She's always been the one in control, the one who sets the tone of every conversation. But with him it's different. There's a playfulness she doesn't quite know how to handle. Hardly, she replies, lifting an eyebrow in mock offense. I do have a life, you know. He laughs, the sound warm and easy. I'm just messing with you. I'm Jake, by the way. Rebecca, she offers, hesitating before extending her hand. He takes it, his grip firm but gentle, and she feels a spark of electricity at the touch. It's been a long time since she's felt this way, flustered out of her element. You seem like someone who's always busy, Jake observes, tilting his head as he looks her over. What brings you back here? She gives a small, wry smile. Sometimes even the busiest people need a break. Well, in that case, how about you join me for a coffee, he suggests, nodding towards the small cafe at the back of the store. It's a bold move, and Rebecca is caught off guard. Men don't usually approach her like this, not without a clear agenda or ulterior motive. But there's something about Jake's directness that disarms her. Why not? She hears herself say, surprising even herself. They settle into a corner booth, and for the first time in what feels like forever, Rebecca feels the weight of her daily responsibilities lift, if only slightly. Jake is easy to talk to. He has a natural charisma, an ease that she finds herself drawn to. He's a student, he tells her, studying business but with a passion for art and music. He's not like the polished, ambitious men she usually meets in her professional circle. He's raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically himself. As they talk, she notices how animated he becomes, gesturing with his hands and laughing freely. It's a stark contrast to her world of careful words and calculated moves. And for a brief moment, she allows herself to forget who she is, the powerful CEO, the successful businesswoman. She's just Rebecca, having coffee with a charming young man who makes her feel seen in a way she hasn't in years. You know, Jake says, leaning back in his chair, I think you might be the most interesting person I've met all year. Rebecca laughs, shaking her head. You don't know anything about me. Maybe, he agrees, his eyes sparkling with mischief. But I'd like to. As they part ways, Jake gives her one last grin and says, See you around, Rebecca. It's a statement, not a question, as if he's certain their paths will cross again. And as she watches him walk away, a part of her hopes he's right. For the first time in a long time, she feels a flutter of excitement, a possibility she thought was lost to her. She knows it's foolish. He's so much younger, so different from anyone she's ever considered before. But as she drives home, she can't help but smile, the memory of his laughter replaying in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, this is the start of something she never knew she needed. The following weekend, Rebecca tries to focus on her work. There's a major contract on the line with a high-profile client, and she knows her reputation is at stake. Usually, she can switch into business mode without hesitation, compartmentalizing her personal life with ease. But this time, something feels different. Her mind keeps wandering back to that afternoon with Jake, the warmth of his smile, the way he made her laugh without trying. She tells herself it's a silly infatuation. He's just a young man, confident, charismatic, but certainly not someone she should be thinking about this way. Yet, every time she thinks of his playful remarks and the spark in his eyes, she feels a thrill rush through her, a thrill she hasn't felt in years. It's like a forbidden door has been opened, and she can't bring herself to close it. On Tuesday evening, Rebecca heads to one of her favorite spots in the city, a small, dimly lit wine bar she frequents after particularly stressful days. It's a place she's always found solace in, where she can unwind and enjoy a quiet moment. As she sips her glass of Merlot, she's lost in thought, staring out at the city lights beyond the window. Is this seat taken? A familiar voice asks, snapping her out of her reverie. She turns, and there he is, Jake, standing with that same relaxed smile, as if he belongs here, as if he knew he'd find her tonight. Her heart skips a beat. What are the odds? She knows it's a big city, and yet here he is again, like fate is playing a game she can't ignore. You again, she says with a teasing smile, trying to hide the excitement bubbling up inside her. Are you stalking me now? He laughs, sliding into the seat across from her without waiting for an invitation. I could ask you the same thing. It's starting to feel like we're meant to keep running into each other. She raises an eyebrow, her fingers tracing the rim of her wineglass. You believe in fate. Jake leans back, his eyes never leaving hers. I believe in taking chances when they feel right. There's a moment of silence, a charged pause that feels heavy with unspoken words. Rebecca finds herself caught in his gaze, the noise of the bar fading into the background. She's used to being the one in control, the one who commands the room. But here, with Jake, she feels like the world has shifted on its axis. It's thrilling and terrifying all at once. "You don't seem like the type to sit alone in a place like this," he says, his tone softer now, almost contemplative. "What's on your mind?" She hesitates. She could brush him off, make a joke, keep things light. But there's something about him that makes her want to be honest, even vulnerable. Maybe it's the way he looks at her, not as the powerful CEO everyone else sees, but as a person, a woman who's more than her title and status. "I needed a break," she admits finally. "Sometimes it's nice to just be." He nods, as if he understands more than she expected. "I get that. The world can be overwhelming sometimes, especially when you're always expected to have it all together." His words strike a chord, and she feels a lump form in her throat. How could he possibly understand? He's so young, just starting out in life, while she's spent decades building her empire, putting on a strong front. And yet, in this moment, she feels more seen by him than she has by anyone in years. "What about you?" she asks, trying to deflect the focus off herself. "What brings you here?" Jake smirks, taking a sip of his drink. "I could say it's a coincidence, but I won't lie. I was hoping I'd run into you." Rebecca's heart flutters at his admission. It's bold, almost reckless, and yet she finds herself smiling, unable to resist the pull he has over her. There's a magnetic energy between them, something she can't explain but doesn't want to question. "Your trouble," she murmurs, shaking her head. He leans in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Maybe, but you don't seem like someone who plays it safe either." Before she can respond, the bartender places another glass of wine in front of her, courtesy of Jake. She's not used to being the one pursued like this, and it's both exhilarating and unnerving. It's as if he sees right through her, stripping away the layers she's carefully built up over the years. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into," she warns, her voice tinged with a playful challenge. Jake raises his glass, clinking it gently against hers. "I think I do. And I'm not scared." They spend the rest of the evening talking, the conversation flowing effortlessly. He shares stories of his college life, his part-time job at a music store, his dreams of traveling the world. She finds herself laughing more than she has in years, letting her guard down little by little. It feels natural, like they've known each other far longer than just a few brief encounters. When it's time to leave, Jake stands up, looking down at her with a grin that's both cocky and endearing. "Same time next week." Rebecca chuckles, shaking her head. "You're assuming I'll be here." "I'm hoping," he corrects, and for the first time, she sees a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. She pauses, considering her response carefully. Part of her wants to say no, to walk away before things get complicated. But the other part, the part that's felt stifled and unfulfilled for so long, wants to say yes. To see where this might lead, even if it's reckless. "We'll see," she says with a small, enigmatic smile. As she watches him leave, she feels a sense of anticipation she hasn't felt in years. Maybe she's playing with fire, but for the first time in a long time, she's ready to get burned. Over the next week, Rebecca's mind is plagued by thoughts of Jake. It's infuriating. She's the head of a multi-million-dollar company, accustomed to juggling high-stakes deals and making decisions that can affect hundreds of employees. But here she is, distracted, replaying their conversations in her head, lingering on the way his smile made her feel. Alive, seen, vulnerable. Every evening after work, she finds herself lingering in places she knows he might be. It's subtle at first, taking a detour past the music store he mentioned, choosing the same coffee shop he likes. She tells herself she's just curious, that she's not really hoping to run into him again. But deep down, she knows she's lying to herself. And then it happens. It's Thursday evening, and she's at the grocery store, the same one where they first met. She's standing in the wine aisle, absent-mindedly turning a bottle in her hands, when she feels a presence beside her. Looking for something special. His voice is low and teasing, and she turns to find him standing there, grinning as if he knew she'd be here. "You again," she says, trying to sound casual even as her heart pounds in her chest. "Do you always frequent the same places as me? Or is this just a coincidence?" Jake leans against the shelf, studying her with an amused expression. Maybe I just have good taste. She rolls her eyes, but there's a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Or maybe you're stalking me. He laughs, the sound light and carefree. If I was, would you be flattered or concerned? Maybe a bit of both, she admits, surprising herself with her honesty. There's a playful spark between them, a back and forth that feels intoxicating. He steps closer, lowering his voice. I was actually hoping I'd see you again. I can't stop thinking about our night at the bar. Her pulse quickens, a thrill shooting through her. She knows she should pull back, set boundaries before things spiral out of control. This isn't who she is. She's always the one in charge, the one who keeps her emotions in check. But with Jake, it feels different. He's like a force of nature, pulling her into a whirlwind she can't resist. Jake, she begins, her tone more serious now. You know this isn't a good idea. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he meets her gaze head-on, his expression softening. Why not? Because of our age difference? Or because you're scared of what might happen? The question hangs in the air between them, heavy with implications. She feels her defenses wavering, the wall she's built around herself starting to crack. He's right, she is scared. Scared of what this could mean. Scared of the chaos it might bring into her carefully constructed life. But there's also a part of her, a wild, rebellious part she thought was long buried, that wants to throw caution to the wind. I'm not scared, she lies, her voice barely above a whisper. He steps even closer, until she can feel the warmth radiating from him, smell the faint, intoxicating scent of his cologne. Then prove it. It's a challenge, one that she knows she shouldn't accept. But the temptation is too strong, the pull between them too powerful to ignore. She tilts her head up, meeting his eyes, feeling the charged silence stretch on. All right, she says finally, her voice tinged with defiance. Let's see where this goes. His smile widens, and for a moment, she sees a flicker of relief in his eyes, as if he wasn't entirely sure she'd say yes. He leans down, his lips brushing her ear as he whispers, You won't regret this. Rebecca watches him leave, her heart racing. She's crossed a line and she knows it, but instead of feeling regret, she feels a rush of exhilaration, like she's standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump. As she finishes her shopping and heads home, she can't help but replay the encounter in her mind. She's playing a dangerous game, one that could cost her everything she's built. But in this moment, she doesn't care. For the first time in years, she feels truly alive, like she's on the verge of something extraordinary. And she's ready to see where this wild, unexpected path might lead. The following weekend, Rebecca finds herself pacing in her apartment. It's early evening, and the city is bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. She's restless, her nerves frayed as she contemplates her next move. She's always been decisive, never one to hesitate, but this feels different. This is personal, intimate, a decision that could change everything. In a sudden burst of courage, she grabs her phone and types a quick message to Jake, Come over tonight. I could use your help with something. It's a flimsy excuse and she knows it, but she's not ready to admit what she truly wants, to herself or to him. Her thumb hovers over the send button for a moment before she takes a deep breath and taps it. The message is sent, and she immediately feels a rush of anxiety. What if he says no? What if he thinks she's being too forward? Her phone vibrates almost immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes, the message reads, followed by a winking emoji. She can't help but smile, a mix of relief and anticipation flooding through her. This is it. There's no turning back now. As she waits, she busies herself with tidying up her apartment, even though it's already immaculate. It's a nervous habit she hasn't indulged in for years. The clock ticks by slowly, every second feeling like an eternity. She checks her reflection in the mirror, adjusting her blouse, wondering if she looks too dressed up for a casual evening at home. But it's too late to change now. She hears a knock on the door. Her heart skips a beat. She takes a moment to compose herself before opening the door, trying to appear as casual as possible. But the moment she sees him standing there, her breath catches. He's dressed simply in a white t-shirt and jeans, but he looks effortlessly handsome, his dark hair slightly tousled, as if he hadn't bothered to fix it before coming over. Hey, he says with that familiar, boyish grin. You needed help? Rebecca lets out a soft laugh, stepping aside to let him in. Something like that. They settle on the couch, a bottle of wine open between them. The conversation starts light, small talk about his classes, her latest business project. But there's a tension underlying every word, a current of unspoken desire that neither of them can ignore. He leans back, watching her intently. "You seem nervous," he says, his voice low and teasing. She bites her lip, averting her gaze. "I'm not used to this." "To what?" he asks, genuinely curious. She hesitates, struggling to find the words. "To not being in control." Jake's expression softens. He reaches out, his fingers lightly brushing against hers. "Maybe it's time to let go a little." The touch sends a shiver down her spine. It's a simple gesture, but it feels like so much more. It feels like trust, like comfort, like an invitation she's been waiting for. Without thinking, she intertwines her fingers with his, meeting his gaze with a vulnerability she's never shown anyone. "You make it sound so easy," she whispers. He moves closer, his face just inches from hers. "It can be," he murmurs, his voice barely audible. "If you let it." For a moment, everything else fades away. The age difference, the risks, the judgment she knows she'll face. All she can see is him. All she can feel is the heat building between them. She leans in slowly, giving him a chance to pull away, to stop this before it goes too far. But he doesn't move. Instead, he closes the gap, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that's both gentle and urgent, as if they've both been holding back for far too long. The kiss deepens, and she feels herself melting into him, her walls crumbling as she gives in completely. When they finally pull apart, they're both breathless, their faces flushed. He rests his forehead against hers, his hand cradling her cheek. "I've wanted to do that since the first moment I saw you," he admits. Rebecca's heart swells at his words. It's the most honest thing anyone has said to her in years. She cups his face in her hands, her thumb brushing over his lips. "Me too," she whispers back, surprised at her own admission. For the first time, she feels like she's standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. And she's not afraid, because with him, she feels like she might just be able to fly. As the night unfolds, they move to the kitchen, where they cook a simple dinner together. It's something ordinary, something she's never done with any of the men she's dated before. It feels strangely intimate, more so than any fancy dinner at a 5-star restaurant ever could. He makes her laugh, teasing her when she burns the garlic, and she realizes with a start that this is what she's been missing, a real, unfiltered connection. By the time they finish eating, it's late. They're back on the couch, a comfortable silence settling between them. He pulls her into his arms, and she rests her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Stay tonight," she says quietly, almost afraid of his response. He presses a kiss to the top of her head, his arms tightening around her. "I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, she knows she's made the right choice. For once, she's let go of control, let herself be vulnerable. And it feels like freedom. The morning light filters through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the living room. Rebecca wakes up, nestled in the warmth of Jake's arms. For a moment, she forgets where she is, until she tilts her head up and sees him, still peacefully asleep beside her. His face, usually filled with that confident, teasing smirk, now looks relaxed and boyish, almost innocent. She takes a deep breath, savoring the unfamiliar but comforting sensation of waking up next to someone who feels like more than just a fleeting moment. It's a stark contrast to the emptiness she's felt for years, waking up alone in her pristine, meticulously organized bedroom. This, lying here, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, feels messy, unplanned, and yet entirely right. Jake stirs, slowly opening his eyes. A sleepy smile spreads across his lips as he meets her gaze. "Morning," he says, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning," she replies softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Did you sleep well?" He chuckles, pulling her closer. "Better than I have in a long time." They lie there in silence for a few moments, simply enjoying the quiet intimacy of the morning. But as the minutes tick by, reality starts to creep back in for Rebecca. She pulls away slightly, sitting up and running a hand through her hair. The logical side of her, the one that has kept her in control for years, is starting to kick in. "Last night," she begins, her voice trailing off as she searches for the right words. Jake sits up, leaning back against the couch. He studies her with those piercing blue eyes, as if he can see right through her. "You're overthinking it already," he says gently. She laughs, a dry, almost bitter sound. "I can't help it. This isn't like me. I don't just invite someone over like that." He reaches out, taking her hand in his. "Maybe that's a good thing," he says. "Maybe it's time you did something different." She squeezes his hand, looking down at their intertwined fingers. "But what happens now?" she asks quietly. "This, whatever this is, how does it work?" Jake sighs, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Why does it have to work right away?" he asks. "Can't we just enjoy it? See where it goes?" The simplicity of his words, the casualness with which he approaches life, is both exhilarating and terrifying to her. She spent decades planning every detail, mapping out her future in meticulous steps. And now here's this young, carefree man, asking her to throw caution to the wind and just live. She wants to say yes. She wants to dive headfirst into the unknown with him. But the fear of judgment, the fear of getting hurt, holds her back. "People will talk," she whispers. Jake's expression softens. He tilts her chin up, forcing her to look at him. "Let them," he says firmly. "I don't care what anyone else thinks. Do you?" His question hangs in the air, heavy with implication. She knows what he's really asking. "Are you willing to take this risk, to choose us over the fear of what others might say?" "I don't know," she admits, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the most honest thing," she said, in a long time. He leans in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "That's okay," he murmurs. "We don't have to have all the answers right now." The tenderness in his voice breaks down her defenses, and she feels tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't realized how badly she needed someone to say that, to tell her that it's okay not to have everything figured out, that it's okay to just feel. Jake cups her face in his hands, brushing away a stray tear with his thumb. "I want you," he says simply. "Not because of your money, or your status, or any of the things you think define you. I want you, just as you are." His words cut through all her doubts, all her fears, and for the first time, she feels truly seen. Without another word, she closes the distance between them, kissing him with a fervor that surprises even her. It's raw, passionate, and completely unguarded. A kiss that says everything she's too afraid to put into words. They spend the morning wrapped up in each other, the rest of the world forgotten. It's not until her phone buzzes with a work notification that she's reminded of the life she's supposed to be leading, the responsibilities she's been neglecting. She reluctantly pulls away, glancing at the time. She's already late for a meeting. "I should go," she says, her voice filled with regret. "I have a million things to do today." Jake nods, but he doesn't look disappointed. Instead, he gives her a reassuring smile. "Go handle your empire, boss lady," he says, giving her a playful wink. "I'll be here when you get back." She laughs, feeling a rush of affection for this young man who has so effortlessly become a part of her life. "You better be," she teases back. As she heads for the door, she pauses, turning back to look at him one last time. He's lounging on her couch, looking completely at home, and she realizes with a start that she wants him there. She wants him to be a part of her life, her world, despite all the reasons she shouldn't. "Jake," she calls softly. He looks up, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah?" "Thank you," she says. The words are simple, but she knows he understands what she means. He smiles, a slow, genuine smile that reaches his eyes. Anytime. She leaves the apartment with a lighter heart, feeling more alive than she has in years. It's scary, it's uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be. Rebecca steps into her sleek, glass-walled office, the familiar hum of city life just outside her window. The view of the skyline, the constant buzz of activity, is usually a source of pride. It reminds her of the empire she's built, the years of hard work, sacrifice, and grit that have gotten her to this point. But today the view seems distant. The phone calls, the meetings, the endless emails, they all feel a little less important. Her mind keeps drifting back to Jake. She can't shake the warmth of his touch, the way his lips had felt against hers, the gentle but relentless pull of his presence. She never expected this. She had never expected to feel so much, so deeply, so completely, about someone so young, so different from the world she's worked so hard to build. Sitting at her desk, she opens her laptop and stares at the screen, but the words blur together. Her assistant's voice cuts through her thoughts, announcing that her next meeting is about to start. She straightens up, clearing her throat, and pulls herself back into work mode. The meeting drags on, the usual flow of strategies, projections, and numbers. The board members drone on about market trends and competitive advantages, but Rebecca isn't fully present. She nods at the right moments, contributes a few thoughts here and there, but her mind keeps slipping back to Jake, his easy smile, the warmth in his eyes, and that carefree way of living that she's been yearning for without even realizing it. As the meeting concludes and the room empties, she sits back, staring out the window. The weight of the decisions she has to make, the burdens of running a billion-dollar company, press on her chest like a vice. But underneath it all, there's something lighter, something she hasn't felt in years, an undercurrent of excitement, of possibility. Later that day, after returning home from work, she finds herself staring at the clock, knowing that soon Jake will show up. The idea of him walking through her door again fills her with anticipation, but also with nervousness. It's one thing to be swept up in a passionate moment, but it's another thing entirely to start navigating the complexities of an actual relationship. When the doorbell rings, she jumps. Her heart races, and she quickly smooths out the wrinkles in her dress before rushing to open the door. Jake stands on the other side, casually leaning against the doorframe, with that same confident smile she's come to crave. "Hey," he says, his voice laced with warmth. "Got your message. Need any help with anything?" Rebecca lets out a laugh, the nervous tension in her shoulders easing. "Not really," she admits, stepping aside to let him in. "I just wanted to see you." The words come out before she can stop them, and she feels a flush spread across her cheeks. It's both thrilling and terrifying to be this open, this vulnerable. He raises an eyebrow, the glint of amusement in his eyes. "Well, you've got me now," he says, his tone playful. Yet there's an unspoken understanding between them. He's not here just for a quick visit. He's here because, just like her, he's feeling the pull between them. They sit down on the couch together, the space between them charged with a quiet energy. There's something different tonight, an unspoken shift, an awareness that whatever they've been playing at before is evolving into something more real, more significant. It's no longer just a flirtation or a passing attraction. It's something deeper. "So," Jake begins, leaning forward slightly, "how's everything at work? You still ruling the world?" Rebecca chuckles, though the sound is more strained than usual. She's not used to talking about her work in a casual way anymore. It's always been a part of her identity, something that defined her, her worth. But tonight, the weight of it all feels like too much. "Busy," she admits, her voice quiet. "Endless meetings, deadlines. You know the drill." He nods but doesn't push her further. Instead, he reaches out, gently taking her hand in his. It's a simple gesture, but it carries so much more. His touch grounds her in a way she wasn't expecting. The tension she's been carrying for so long begins to unravel with every beat of his heart. Rebecca exhales slowly, staring at their joined hands. "I've been thinking a lot, Jake," she says, her voice soft but steady. "About what this is. What we're doing." Jake doesn't look at her with confusion or doubt. Instead, he meets her gaze with that unwavering calm, the same calm that has helped her find peace in the midst of chaos before. He simply nods. "I know," he says, squeezing her hand. "I've been thinking about it too." There's a pause, as if they're both weighing the next words carefully, like walking along a narrow bridge that might crumble under their feet at any moment. Rebecca finally speaks, her voice laced with both fear and resolve. "I don't know what this is either. I don't know where it's going or how it fits into my life, but I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting to be with you." The admission hangs in the air, vulnerable and raw. She feels exposed, as if she's just stripped away every layer she's carefully built around herself for years. But the truth is, it feels good. It feels like a release, like something she's been carrying for too long. Jake's expression softens, and he leans in closer, his voice barely a whisper. "I feel the same way, Rebecca. I'm not going anywhere, okay?" Her heart swells with something she hasn't felt in a long time, hope. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe it's reckless. But for the first time in years, she's not afraid to take that leap. She leans in, closing the gap between them, and their lips meet in a kiss that feels different from the others they've shared. This one is slow, deliberate, a promise, an acceptance of the unknown. As they pull away, Rebecca looks at him, her breath shaky. "I don't know where this will go," she says, her voice trembling. "But I'm ready to find out." Jake smiles softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Me too." In that moment, with his touch, with his gaze, Rebecca feels lighter than she's ever felt in her entire life. For the first time, she's letting go of control, and it feels like freedom. The following days are a blur of exhilaration and uncertainty. Rebecca continues to navigate her demanding career, but her heart no longer feels solely tethered to boardrooms or profit margins. Instead, it's tethered to Jake, his smile, his laugh, the way he makes her feel seen in a way no one else ever has. Their encounters become more frequent, each one a revelation. The difference between their worlds is impossible to ignore. His youth and carefree spirit, her maturity and carefully curated life. Yet, instead of driving them apart, these contrasts pull them closer together. Jake has an ability to make her feel alive again, to remind her of the joy that's been buried under years of responsibility. In his presence, the weight of her life feels lighter. But this new dynamic comes with its challenges. Late one evening, after a long day, Rebecca is sitting at her desk when a familiar buzz sounds from her phone. She picks it up to find a text from Jake, inviting her to an impromptu dinner at a cozy little bistro he loves. It's just the kind of spontaneous plan she's always shied away from, but for once, she finds herself craving the freedom of it. She quickly sends back a message saying she's on her way. When she arrives, she finds Jake sitting in a dimly lit corner of the restaurant, his face lighting up when he sees her. His energy is infectious, and she's immediately reminded of how much she enjoys his company. He stands to greet her, pulling out the chair for her with a grin. "Glad you could make it," he says, his eyes full of warmth. "I've been craving your company all day." Rebecca chuckles and takes a seat. "I've had a few too many meetings myself. But now this feels like the kind of evening I needed." The conversation flows effortlessly as they talk about everything and nothing, from his plans for the future to her favorite childhood memories. Jake's perspective on life is fresh and unburdened, and it's something she finds herself coming to admire. She starts to realize that his simplicity is exactly what she needs in her complicated world. But as they talk, there's a nagging voice in the back of her mind. She can't ignore the judgments she knows are coming. Friends, family, colleagues, they're all bound to notice. She's a powerful woman with a reputation to uphold. A relationship like this, so unconventional, so filled with contradictions, will be hard for the world to understand. The dinner ends with a warm hug, and as Rebecca walks back to her car, she feels conflicted. A part of her is elated, filled with a sense of possibility. But another part feels that familiar tension, fear of the future, fear of what people will say. She knows that a love like this is anything but simple. As she arrives home, she pours herself a glass of wine and sits in her living room, staring at the city below. She's never been the kind of person to worry about others' opinions, but this feels different. This feels like something worth fighting for. The question is, will she have the strength to do so? Just then, her phone buzzes again. It's a message from Jake. "I'm thinking about you. Can't wait to see you again soon." The words make her heart skip a beat. There it is again. An unspoken connection that's stronger than anything she's ever felt before. And for the first time in years, Rebecca lets go of her doubts. She doesn't have all the answers, and the future is far from certain, but she knows one thing. She's not ready to walk away from this. She picks up the phone and types a quick response, "Me too. Let's make it happen." And just like that, she knows. She's chosen this path, this unpredictable, risky, and thrilling love story. She's chosen him. No matter what comes next, she's ready to face it, because for the first time, she's living for herself. The weeks that follow are a whirlwind of emotions, challenges, and unforgettable moments. Rebecca and Jake's connection only deepens as they continue to navigate their unconventional relationship. They've become a constant in each other's lives, their bond growing stronger despite the world's expectations. Every time they meet, the age difference, the societal whispers, and the judgmental glances feel a little less important. All that matters is the way they make each other feel, alive, seen, and truly understood. But as their relationship evolves, so too do the pressures. Rebecca's colleagues start to notice. At first, it's subtle. A knowing glance from a coworker, a few hushed conversations behind closed doors. But as time passes, the whispers grow louder. They're inevitable. People are curious, people are skeptical, and some are downright critical. One afternoon, Rebecca finds herself in a tense meeting with her team, her mind elsewhere. She's been dealing with an overwhelming number of projects, and the stress of it all is starting to take a toll. The CEO, an older man who's known her for years, glances at her with a knowing smile before clearing his throat. "So, Rebecca, I've noticed you've been a little distracted lately. Everything okay?" His tone is polite, but there's an edge to it, a question she knows he's itching to ask. Rebecca stiffens, but her instincts kick in. She gives him a tight-lipped smile and nods. "Everything's fine. Just a lot on my plate." He doesn't push further, but she can sense the unspoken question hanging in the air. "What's going on in your life? Who's distracting you?" She knows they're all talking about her personal life behind her back. It's hard to avoid when the whole office is buzzing with curiosity. As soon as the meeting ends, her phone vibrates on the table. It's a message from Jake. "You okay? You seem a little off today." Rebecca sighs, staring at the screen. She hasn't told him about the tension at work. She hasn't told him about the subtle way her colleagues have been judging her for being with someone so much younger. It's not that she's ashamed of him, far from it. But she's unsure how to explain it all without sounding like she's making excuses. She types back, "Just work stuff. I'll be fine." She knows he'll pick up on the fact that she's not being completely honest, but right now, it's easier to keep her worries to herself. She doesn't want to burden him with her fears. Instead, she decides to take a different approach. Later that evening, after a long day of meetings, Rebecca finds herself standing in front of the mirror in her bedroom. She's dressed in a chic outfit, her makeup flawless as always, but tonight feels different. It's the first time in a while that she's truly questioning herself. Her powerful, confident persona, the one she's built over the years, is starting to feel like a mask. Beneath it, there's a woman torn between following her heart and maintaining the image she's worked so hard to create. Just as she's about to give in to the doubts swirling in her mind, her phone buzzes again. It's Jake, asking if she wants to meet up. And in that moment, she knows what she has to do. She texts him back, "Yes, I need you. Come over now." When Jake arrives, there's no need for words. The moment he walks through the door, Rebecca feels an overwhelming sense of relief. She doesn't have to hide with him. With Jake, she doesn't have to play a part. She can be herself, vulnerable, uncertain, and yet strong in her own way. They talk for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly, until the night stretches on. Rebecca shares her worries about the whispers at work, about the judgment she's been feeling. Jake listens intently, his eyes soft with understanding. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he tells her, his voice steady and calm. "What we have is real. That's what matters." And for the first time in a long while, Rebecca truly believes it. The world might not understand their love, but she doesn't need them to. All she needs is Jake, his love, his presence, his belief in them both. The next day, Rebecca walks into the office with a newfound sense of confidence. The whispers are still there, but they no longer affect her the way they used to. She's ready to face the world, Jake by her side. She's no longer afraid to be vulnerable, to stand up for the love that's changed her life. She knows the road ahead won't be easy, but she's willing to fight for it. Together, they can face anything. The days turn into weeks, and Rebecca and Jake's relationship continues to evolve, becoming a cornerstone of both their lives. They've crossed boundaries and faced challenges that most people never have to contend with, but their connection remains undeniable. They've faced the judgment, the gossip, and the societal expectations, and each obstacle they overcome only makes their bond stronger. Jake's youthful energy complements Rebecca's seasoned wisdom, and together, they create a balance that neither of them expected but both desperately needed. With every passing day, Rebecca feels more alive, more confident in her own skin. Jake has brought a spark into her life that she had long forgotten, and she can't imagine her world without him in it. But while they've learned to embrace their love, they know that the journey ahead won't always be easy. The world isn't always kind to people who don't fit into neatly defined boxes. They're constantly met with sideways glances, whispers behind closed doors, and the occasional criticism. But none of that matters to them anymore. One afternoon, Rebecca sits in her office, gazing out the window at the bustling city below. Her phone buzzes on the desk, and it's a message from Jake. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you tonight." A smile tugs at the corners of her mouth as she types back, "I miss you too. Let's make tonight unforgettable." In that moment, she realizes how far they've come. It's been a journey of self-discovery, of challenging her own fears and expectations. She's let go of the need to please everyone and has learned to follow her heart. With Jake, she's found something real, something that transcends age, status, and what others think. As the evening approaches, Rebecca prepares herself to meet Jake. She's not the same woman who first met him in the grocery store, the one who was unsure, afraid of the unknown. Now, she's someone who has chosen love, who has decided to live fully, unapologetically. When Jake arrives at her apartment, the same warmth, the same electric connection between them is there. They don't need words to understand each other. Their chemistry speaks volumes. And tonight, they both know that their love has overcome every obstacle in its path. Rebecca leans in to kiss him, feeling the weight of everything that's led them here. The challenges, the doubts, the risks, and she knows that it was all worth it. In his arms, she feels a sense of peace she's never known, and for the first time, she's not worried about what others think. Together, they've built something that's theirs and theirs alone. As the night unfolds, Rebecca and Jake know that their love story is far from over. They have no idea what the future holds, but they don't need to. They've found something that no one can take away from them, a love that's raw, real, and entirely their own. And for the first time in years, Rebecca feels truly free.